In today's lesson, we're going to learn about 4 glow effects that you can do inside Premiere Pro. So let's get started. I have some clips here and each of them will be used for these glow effects. I have this dance video which is not that bright, and this is perfect because the lines that we're going to put on will stand out. Alright, so let's begin by making a new adjustment layer and putting it right above. Putting this stuff on an adjustment layer will give us more control over how the effect looks like. So first let's add the Gaussian blur effect, which as we learned before gives us that dreamy look. Add this on your adjustment layer and we're just going to increase the amount. Let's go with 60. Once we change the blend mode, we're gonna get this soft look, which right now is a little too bright. So let's head to the Lumetri workspace and lower the brightness of our video. I'm gonna use curves, make a point right here, pull it down, and then you're gonna get a less intense look. Next, we're going to mask this with the opacity, the polygon tool. Just put it all over the image. And this will help in the upcoming effects that we're going to put on. So just pull them in the corners and make sure that it's covering your entire video. There's my mask. Close this off. Now we're going to add the Find Edges effect, which as we learned, isolates the edges of whatever that is inside the video. You're going to get this. Go to your effects and first we're going to invert it. So we get the lines and not the background, and then we're going to bring this above Gaussian blur. So as you can see, we're getting these flushed lines, which is looking good so far. So now what we want to do is to just go back to the Lumetri color and just work with the colors in general. So you can like introduce some greens, purples, and just make it the way you want it. You can also fix it with basic correction to get the right amount of light. I'm actually going to duplicate my Lumetri color effect, Command C, Command V, and pull the duplicate above all of my layers, my effects I mean. Now I accidentally made my Lumetri on the base video. Just copy it and paste it into your adjustment layer. Then copy this, paste it, put it above all of your other layers. So you should have 2 Lumetri colors, each of them having the curves adjustment that we did earlier. Now on the top one, we're going to reset the curve and instead introduce some colors. So head down to RGB curves, and using all of these guys, you can just introduce some random colored lines. Let's start with saturation and saturation. Make some points with your pen tool and just really randomly move them up and down. So we can like try random stuff, and you can see immediately I'm adding like glows of color for my subject. The more you play around with these, the more points you're gonna get. So this is what it looks so far, before, after. All right, so let's go for another one. Hue and hue. Add a few random lines. I made a bunch of really random points, and now I have this effect. This is what it looked like before. This is what it looks like after. So we're getting these glowy lines that are colorful because of all of the curves that we just made. So now we're getting kind of like a softer look, but once I go back in my Gaussian blur effect and lower the blurriness, I'm going to get these lines. So you just have to work with the Gaussian blur And that way you can get these lines on your subject. So this is looking pretty good. As we said, this is great for dancing videos. And before moving forward, just work with the slider here and get the thickness and the softness of the line that you want. I'm going to stick with 15. Zoom out, and that's looking good for me. So we have these lines on our subject, but we can take it a step further by adding another Gaussian blur. Because we're getting these stuff in the back, and it kind of looks like noise. So get another Gaussian blur effect, add it on your adjustment layer. Bring this guy above all your other stuff. Now with this Gaussian blur, you can decide how soft the overall effect is. So if you pull it towards the right, you can see that I'm just getting it on my subject mostly and not on my background. So now we're getting this ring effect all over the subjects. And because our video is not that bright, the lines are standing out a lot better. So I will stick with 14. Close this off. And now you can just work with how bright or how vibrant these lines are. So go to Lumetri Color, grab your adjustment layer, Creative, and first of all, we can just increase the vibrance. And you can see how I'm making those colors more vibrant, and that is causing them to look a lot better. This was before, this is after. You can try saturation, pump that up, and get something better. Just make sure that you are working with the adjustment layer and not the original, because the adjustment layer just have these lines. You can also go to basic correction, increase contrast to isolate those lines better. Maybe reduce some of the shadows, increase the highlights, and it's really a matter of working with these sliders. So now my dancing video is looking pretty cool. If you wanted to get a different type of color, you can go back to the curves that we had earlier. Let's go to Effect Controls, the Lumetri Color that had these zigzag curves. And if you work with any of these, you're going to get a different coloring. You can also go to Curves here, and on the adjustment layer, perhaps maybe add more blue to the colors, bring them towards the redder side, purple side, and I can just alter the colors with my curves. I can use blue to either add blue or remove blue, green to either add green or remove green, red to add or remove red. So work with these until you have something you want. I want mine on the cooler side, so I'm going to bring my red down and get like a purple and neon green. Let's also add a little bit of green and a little bit of blue. So I don't want any warm tones here. And that way I can isolate these colder tones. So once I have this, we're just going to add one final effect, which works with the hue and saturation and all that. We used this effect in a previous lesson. Add this right above. And as you recall, we get to work with the different sliders and change the hue, saturation, contrast, and brightness. So add this effect right underneath, and we have these sliders. We already know how to work with them, just making keyframes can make this look cool. So I will go to the beginning of my video, make a keyframe for hue at 0 degrees, go forward or to the end actually, and have it run a full cycle. So 1 times 0, and that is 1 full hue cycle. So my colors are going to change over time. We're going to start with purple, move to like red, then yellow and green, then back to blue, purple. If you wanted to do like 2 cycles, you would do 2 times 0 degrees and just work from there. You can also work with like the brightness if you want to do some flashing animations. It's up to you. There's also the contrast slider, which is going to help maybe reduce the intensity, increase it. You can also make keyframes for this and have it kind of flash through the entire timeline. Let's start at 0, move forward. Let's start at 0 and then hold down Shift, press this once to count 5 frames. Let's increase the contrast to 70, Shift again, 5 frames forward, and let's go back to 0. So this will give me like a flashing effect, which will last 10 frames. We can just copy and paste this multiple times so that the flash effect happens a bunch of times. Saturation is another thing that you can work with. It's gonna work with the saturation of your effects. Maybe at some point you want these glowy lines to not show up and then show up where the other have. So I will start my video with 0 for saturation. With 0 saturation, move forward and then slowly introduce these colors. And if you increase it more than 100, you're going to get something more vibrant. So let's take a look at what our video looks like. Set your out point, render in, and now this is what we have. So the colors are changing. At times they get like brighter and then they go back to normal. And since this is a dance video, what we can do is to match the effect with the beat of the music. Now here we don't have any music, but you can just look at the movement of the subject. So like when she brings her hand up, we can maybe activate that contrast keyframe, make your marker. She brings her hand up again, make another marker. So if you match it with the movement of your subject, things are going to look pretty good. I'm going to make another one where she's doing this rotation thing. And now I can just go to my effect controls, open up my keyframes, go to the first marker, and make sure that the keyframes match right here. So I want my middle one to be right on this marker. And this way, whatever effects I add on will be matched with the subject's movement. It's my second keyframe. You can see that it's really off. Okay, highlight all 3, bring the middle one, matching it with the marker. So just repeat this with your dancer's movement. If you had music in the back, match it with the beat as well. Since this is a longer dance move, I'm just gonna work with the distance of my keyframes. So she's just doing the rotation movement from this point until the other point. I'm going to delete the first keyframe, go back and remove this keyframe too. So basically what I did was that from this point that she starts her rotation dance until the end, my contrast is up at 70. And then after she moves on to another move, it's back to 0. So we are just matching this up. Another tip is to have the lines separate from the subject. That way I can like put it on a black and white version of this video, a different colored one, and just get more control over how my bottom video looks like. Because right now, if I go to my video, go to Lumetri Color, remove the saturation, I'm also going to remove the saturation from my glowy lines because these two are connected. So what we're going to do is to first bring back my saturation. So we're just going to highlight both of these, right click, nest, let's call this dance lines. Then we're just going to grab the video in again, put it right underneath, make sure that it matches in time. You can also duplicate the video before you nest. But the point is that you want both the clips on top of each other, and it's really important that the time matches. So you don't want the video to be offsetted, or else that's going to look weird when we extract the lines. Grab your top nested layer, go to Effect Controls, change the blending mode to Difference. And now you're just getting those lines. Grab these two again, right click, nest, I'm going to call this lines. Pull this up, bring your video again. Or just duplicate it. And now I can take this, go to my Effect Controls, change it to Screen. So now what I can do with this line, because it's separated, I can add a glow effect, strobe light effect, just any other effect. But we couldn't do this before because the lines were attached to the video. So right now it's separated, and this gives me a lot more control. Let's add VR glow to this and just work with the amount. I'm gonna turn this off and just focus on this. You can also like switch to this screen, just make it look good. So I'm going to increase my brightness. Let's go for 5, radius 50, threshold 0. So bring my video back. It's gonna look pretty glowy. So let's just increase the threshold just by a touch, and then the radius. So now I can maybe just get rid of my bottom video, or maybe do cuts. Grab them both, Command K again. And if I like take this middle section, I'm like switching between the colored video, and then suddenly it's just their outlines dancing in the dark. So again, I can match this with the music and get this effect. Then maybe on the third cut, where I have this, I can just get rid of the saturation here. So I get the glowy lines and not the color of the video. Something we couldn't do before. So now this is what my video looks like. Alright, so this was our first effect. If it's too intense for you, you can go back to the Lumetri color inside the nest, or you can actually do it here. Just grab it here, go to basic correction, maybe like decrease the highlights, remove from the exposure so you get like a less intense line. This is all optional. So you just need to work with these sliders in order to make it look good. So this was our first effect. In the next lesson, we're going to do the second effect, which again involves glow, but it will be done a little differently. So I will see you guys in the next part.